The City Council, the latest group to take aim at the NYPD, unveiling a series of new bills that would reshape policing in New York City. NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea joining me now to discuss these reforms and what changes we can expect to see in the coming months. Good to see you again, Commissioner Shea.
Hey, Dan, glad to be back.
Hey, first and foremost, Commissioner, I do know you had coronavirus. Want to just check how you are feeling this morning.
I really feel good. My first bout with a treadmill yesterday went okay, so back to work and ready to go.
Glad to hear it, sir. Glad you're feeling better and back to work. So first things first, let's talk about this picture you tweeted out yesterday of the Joint Operations Center where the NYPD was monitoring the snowstorm. Were officers redeployed to certain areas in the midst of the storm?
Well, it's more about, Dan, just making sure we have enough resources. Police officers, more importantly, the civilian members of the department. That's who sometimes gets lost here, but they're a critical part of what we do each and every day. So, for example, you know, when the subways shut down above ground yesterday, we put a plan into place immediately to make sure 9/11 operators that tend to take the train to work were able to answer the call. So it went pretty well all in all, and I was just stopping in there to thank the people that were manning the desk.
Yeah, I saw so many on the streets yesterday as I was walking around, and they were busy in action on a very busy day. I want to switch gears here, Commissioner, and talk now about police reform. It's a big topic you and I have discussed, especially the latest proposals by the City Council, which would actually require the police commissioner to be confirmed by the City Council. I want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, you know, and I've seen it, and we're going to be in discussions as we move forward. I know there's hearings. My first reaction, Dan, in all honesty, is it's really more of an issue for the mayor or the next mayor, I would think. And then, you know, I start thinking about, like, listen, where are we right now, and what is going on in New York City? And what are the people in New York City worried about? They're worried about crime. They're worried about quality of life. They're worried about schools. An interesting article with lack of trust in schools outside New York City in the Times today. You know, we're worried about businesses. We're worried about vaccines. Is this the priority? Is my first thought, and that's just an honest thought.
No, I appreciate your honest thoughts as well, and I think you and I have also discussed trust, right? And I think that is what it comes down to as well, and leadership from the top, having that trust within the community. And that brings me to the State Attorney General, Letitia James. She recently filed that lawsuit against the NYPD for excessive force during the Black Lives Matter protests. We've discussed this in our interview that we aired back in December. But now are these new calls for a court-appointed monitor to oversee the department as a whole. That is new. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, you know, as to the state AG, you know, I've met and spoke to the Attorney General a number of times. Very smart woman. Respect her. On this particular point, we would probably have a difference of opinion, but that's, you know, in a healthy way. I'm not going to speak to the real report because now there is an active lawsuit. But, you know, reforms are critical. They are. We're not shying away from reforms. We're working very diligently to make sure that any trust that has eroded, and I think that's a fact of life.
Right. Would you be open to what the governor is suggesting? The governor is suggesting that court-appointed monitor to oversee the whole department.
Listen, I think now you're getting into the realm of politics, and I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, you know, 100% this is all, to me, politics. I think the reform piece, absolutely, we're going through that, and we'd be going through it without any executive orders either. We've been working on trying to get closer to the communities we serve for many years, and we're not perfect. But when you start talking about now meaningless press conferences, I think you're into the more of the sleight of hand and distraction from some of these other issues that I've mentioned. Let's talk about reform, and let's talk about crime. Where is the plan to help the victims of crime in New York State, not just New York City? You know, businesses, vaccines. I mean, and I could go on, but it's a lot easier to have a press conference about nothing and distract. That's what I think.
I mean, if we had a full hour, we can get into the weeds on every one of these topics, Commissioner. But one of the things I listened into was that phone call you had the other day about what the mayor outlined during his State of the City speech. The mayor saying that he would like to have community leaders involved now in the selection of precinct commanding officers. How soon will that begin? And I know it's something that you were on board with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I spoke to the mayor about that. When I first heard about it, and I heard about it in the reform meetings, listening to the community. and this was a topic that came up repeatedly, and we went over and over. We went over it with, the people we're working with. We went over it internally and hashed this out. I did then subsequent conversations with the mayor, and after a lot of thought, I support it. And, how soon? The answer is immediately, but it's going to take some time. These positions do not come up that often.
Right.
We have a look of 77 precincts in New York City, and how long people are in those positions, and what's the process to rotate. So we have to work through some of the logistics and working with the councils. Having discussions with the unions who have concerns. All of that is valid. The announcement came out pretty quick, but something I'm committed to. I think it's a good thing.
Understood. Commissioner, there's also, you mentioned the crime in the community, what's being done. Again, this is a topic I feel like we hit every time when you and I speak.
Yeah.
And it's an increase in gun violence across the city. You recently said the NYPD is making more than a dozen gun-related arrests every single day. I mean, that's an astonishing number. So is there a new strategy then to get guns off the street, since that's one of the biggest issues?
Yeah, and Dan, what are we talking about the last 24 hours? A blizzard in New York City?
Right.
Would you be surprised if I told you in New York City yesterday, during a blizzard, we had 6 separate shooting incidents where people were hit? I mean, it's astounding. I don't think the problem is getting the guns off the street. I think the problem is getting the people that carry guns off the street. Let's be very clear here. We're making more gun arrests than we ever have, but we can continue to make those gun arrests, and until we have real discussions and real follow-through on consequences, we're going to have a tough road. A lot of redeployment within the Detective Bureau, a lot of redeployment to focus on this gun. That's what's leading to the increase in gun arrests. We think we're doing it smartly. We think we're doing it constitutionally. We're always on the alert to make sure that we're balancing everything. But what we're seeing is a revolving door, or maybe you could just say an open door, where 90% roughly of the people that we've arrested for guns are out on the street, whether they're awaiting a disposition of their court case or they're not prosecuted. Yeah. And that is a real obstacle that we continue to have to face.
As the vaccine rollout continues, do you see, if the pandemic ends, that maybe what you're seeing on the flip side, because the pandemic has shut down courts and everything is kind of slower, that it may change?
That's a great question, and it's something I think about every hour. I think that things will get better when we have a normalcy return. Certainly the courts and grand juries, and I know that this is something, I speak to the different prosecutors in New York City, very concerned for a return of quote-unquote normalcy to the criminal justice system. But I also, I am very concerned, about even when the courts go back to normal. The normal state of affairs is not good, Dan.
Right.
Think about all the announcements, and you can go back and look at what I've said last year, even before the pandemic. We still have all of that waiting for us. We still have a system here right now that is not worried enough about the victims of crime, and is a little out of balance. I'll phrase it that way. So I think there's improvements that still need to be made. What we know is the weather's going to get warm, and a lot of people are going to come out on the street to enjoy everything that New York City has to offer. And when you combine that with some tough quality of life issues, and you combine that with the prevalence of illegal handguns, it is a bad mix. And that's what we have to fight to fix.
It's going to be a long year, and a lot of people have that energy that they want to express once they get out of their homes from being pent up for so long. Commissioner Shea, I'm sure we'll be talking to you. It's going to be a long year and a long road to recovery ahead. Glad to see you back in action, and glad you're feeling better.
Thanks, Dan.